That was Frank, and listening to him, I think he's right, Simon, on a whole bunch of points. He worked at Chelsea in a tough moment, and at Everton in the last few years has been a tough place to go to, a tough club to work for.
Right, so
Great managers before me have had tough moments there. He says, I want to go somewhere I can really get my teeth into the job, and I feel it's going to go in the direction I hope it is the right direction for it. In other words, Frank hasn't been. He would have gone to Rangers if the opportunity had been granted him.
So which managers is he referring to at Everton? Had tough times before him, because no one put them fourth and bottom of the league. That was him and Rafa Benitez that achieved that wonderful outcome.
Oh, well, how many of those managers succeeded at Everton?
But they didn't take them to fourth and bottom of the league, did they?
Ronald Koeman didn't last long. No, it didn't work out for him.
But Ronald Koeman achieved...
Big Sam couldn't get it going.
They got them further up the table. They didn't put them in relegation jeopardy. And Sam Allardyce came in and fixed their relegation problems and put them further up the table. Ronald Koeman did some decent things there at Everton.
Marcus Silva didn't.
Much better than what they're doing now. And it may well be their circumstances. But when I look at Frank's arguments, and I understand them, the reason why they didn't get relegated is because Burnley, Watford and Norwich stank the place out that year. Burnley and Norwich and Watford got 23 points, got relegated with 23 points. I mean, that's up there with the all-time lows of Derby and Sunderland in the past. So, we're not talking about great benchmarks there. He went into Chelsea, had a decent side, they got to an FA Cup final, they lost it. Right? Went to Derby, got to a playoffs, they lost it. Right? So we can trot this out for Frank. We all like Frank. And the jobs that he's been given, to me, he hasn't really earned the right to have them. And yes, they've been difficult jobs because he's not a fully fledged, fully rounded manager. So it was always going to be difficult to go into Chelsea.
No, but if you frame it in the way you're framing it,
it's the right way to frame it. That's why.
But why is it the right way to frame it?
Because I'm not framing it from my mate that's sitting across the table from me, that's doing a podcast with me.
He kept them up.
He did keep them up, but the point is that
that's a positive.
Yeah. You give him credit where credit's due. The fact of the matter is that he would have got them relegated the following season, so it would have been an exercise in futility. And the reason why he got the Spanish Archers elbow was because he was going to get them relegated. And Sean Dyche came in and rescued them by the skin of their teeth and did the same thing that he did in the first season. Because what Lampard did was inherit a toxic mess from Benitez. Managed to hold it together by the skin of their teeth. The Everton fans were so influential.
Inherited the toxic mess.
Yeah, because the ridiculousness of Fahid Mashiri's decision-making process to put Benitez in the dugout. And an Everton fan base that were having none of it. You get Lampard in there. I like Frank Lampard. I think there's
doesn't sound like it.
No.
What, as a manager?
I made the observation 2 years ago that people regularly turn around to me and say, I said Frank Lampard would be a far better manager than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Now, that's a low bar, and I still think I can win that argument, right? But the bottom line is that Frank Lampard's resume, I don't think reads as a first-class manager at this moment in time, and he can make the argument. He'll make his arguments that he went to Derby and he did something at Derby. He got an access to Chelsea's squad. He got to take players on loan that most people can dream of, and the team didn't get out of the division. Right, and that was his job. That's what Mel Moyes put him in there to do. He went to Chelsea. It was too early for him to go there, quite frankly, and he did a decent season. They lost the FA Cup final. They should have won it. They should have beaten Arsenal against a relatively nondescript Arsenal side.
See, I get the impression, and there's now one of many, incidentally, getting in touch, Liverpool fan. This isn't sounding like you, Simon. You're just anti-Frank Lampard for some reason.
I'm not.
Would you give him the time of day for any job that he might go for?
Yes, of course I would, at the level that I think he's at. And I think that he should never have left Derby's a different animal because it became a basket case economically. But he hadn't earned the right to get the Chelsea job. It's ridiculous. It's the same argument being run in the Rooney argument. He's got no right to the Birmingham job, besides they fancy Wayne Rooney because his name is Wayne Rooney. There's no basis in theory.
So you would admit, you judge ex-pros, high-profile ex-pros, more harshly than you would for, I don't know this guy, so let's give him a chance.
Well, look, I mean, and Tim Sherwood made an argument with me on a podcast about the idea that people in Portugal that we've never heard of either, that haven't got huge records, are getting recognition in this country and given opportunities. And he might have some validity in that.
So I'll ask you again, do you judge ex-pros more harshly than this fellow who's just approaching us now to try and apply for a job that we don't really know?
I personally think that, people have got to earn...
Yes or no?
No, because it's not a yes or no answer. I think people have got to be judged upon what their credentials are. And if you're suggesting to me that Frank Lampard has got credentials to be Chelsea's manager, I would argue that he didn't have them at the time when he was given the job. I would argue it was a ridiculous decision based upon the fact his name was Frank Lampard and he was a playing legend. Because his record at Derby was okay, he got them into a playoffs and they lost. Is that what Chelsea have built their stock in trade upon?
Yeah, but I mean, there's so many you could pull into this argument. Philippe Clement, who had heard of him? Does he have the credentials to take over at Rangers?
If you look at his record, I looked at his record and I think he's got a pretty decent record actually. And I actually think moving to Rangers is possibly, in an argument terms, not in the scale of the football club, but quality of the league, a little bit of a step sideways, if not down.
There's one message. If Simon's argument is true, then Arteta shouldn't have a job at Arsenal.
And there's an argument for that. But the bottom line is...
It's a binary argument, isn't it?
Well, it is a binary argument, but it also is then superseded by outcomes, because Arteta got to a cup final and won the FA Cup. So he won something in his first opportunity. Then they got close to, again to getting into the Champions League that they hadn't done for a previous period of time. And now Arteta's proven the case. But he gave momentum. Where was the momentum in Frank's position? I'm debating. Where was the momentum? Arteta wins an FA Cup.
I would argue that he's in jobs. He's taken jobs that don't allow for momentum.
Well, again, I'd argue that the Chelsea job gave you...
The one thing he had to do at Everton was keep them up.
Well,
Did he do it? Tick.
He could have won the FA Cup with Chelsea. He could have managed the players in the dressing room like Rudiger better. He could have provided solutions. The first time Frank Lampard got some money to spend, all of a sudden, the wheels come off for Chelsea.
Where should Frank's next job be, in your view?
It was interesting.
I've got a thing about Frank, and I reckon we're still to see the very best of Frank Lampard as a manager.
Maybe I like him.
Given the right opportunity.
Ironically, I tripped across the phone call we had with James O'Brien years ago, where he phoned up that weasel James O'Brien, put him in his place about the disparaging observations he was making about Frank Lampard and his personal life. And I thought, I've forgotten. I quite admire you that way. I like that. Where should he? I mean, Souness was interesting the other day. And as much as I take a lot of what Graeme says at face value, because it's Graeme, his argument that Lampard should do the job is because he still has the hunger and ambition.
Yeah.
And he's got plenty of money. So bleeding what? Has he got the capability? Has he got the tactical?
But that's exactly the sort of question you'd ask Lampard in a job interview. Frank, you've got more money than God. I know you've got properties all over London.
It's part of the question.
I need to know this from you in your mouth.
But they've all got
Have you still got the hunger and appetite to work at this level?
They've all got that in real terms. Most of them have got that. You know, you talk to hedge fund managers that are worth 100 billion quid, 100 million quid, they still want to get 200 million quid. So the point is that's part of the question. Have you got the appetite? Yes, fine, fantastic. Have you really got the appetite when it gets dark and dirty and mucky and horrible and the bullets are flying and you're in amongst the pub and everything else? And you really want it then? Okay, fine. Now tell me how you're going to do it. That's the second part of the conversation.
And that's the crucial part, I admit. I'll give you one last go at this. To judge ex-pros more harshly than others who haven't played the game at a high level.
Do I judge...
Stop giving yourself time.
No, I'm not.
Yes
I'm
or no?
I'm not. Because do I judge big name players that haven't got the right to get certain jobs? Yeah.
Does Rooney have the right?
No, it doesn't.
Rooney doesn't have the right to be managing.
I think there are better qualified managers that have learnt their trade, that know the game better than Wayne Rooney does as a manager, not as a player. He ain't a player no more. Nobody cares what he did as a player. Nobody gives a monkeys what he did as a player. It's about whether you can manage. Because what did Jose Mourinho do as a player? Nothing.
Of course.
What did Arsene Wenger do as a player? Nothing. And these are the guys that changed the way that football's played in this country at times. So these are the guys that I would take something from.
Yeah.
These are the guys that have earned their stripes.
You don't think they're taking anything from their playing days so that they could implement now? I would suggest probably they could.
There's the difference. Well, then why isn't Roy Keane a brilliant manager? Why wasn't Teddy Sheringham a brilliant manager? Why have some of these top players never been able to cut it? Because it's one thing looking after yourself. It's another thing looking after the ability to manage up, to be able to lead by example in every aspect. We've got Wayne Rooney, with respect to the bravery of the subject matter, talking about his alcohol problems whilst he's a current manager. I'm not entirely sure that sends out the message that you want to hear, that your manager had problems with alcohol once upon a time in the past.
Why not?
I'm not suggesting that it's not an admirable quality, but it doesn't need to find the light of day. Like it didn't need to find the light of day that Wayne Rooney was drunk in a hotel room 18 months ago. These things find the light of day because maybe they're breaking stories that they get in front of. But these are, you look at leaders. It's like I'm listening to this story about Ferguson and Man United, and you start to find out Ferguson's attitude towards the Rock of Gibraltar. And some of these people that people put up there as leaders of men that you should admire, you want to have a little bit more look at their character. Because they're not all icons that you think that they are. But going to your original question...
Come closer to me. I want to kick that soapbox.
I know. There's two of us on the show today. I've got plenty more time.
You can ask yourself the question I've been asking you now 4 times.
Do I judge
ex-pros more harshly? You do. You judge Rooney super harshly. You're judging Frank super harshly. Because you follow up with, I don't care what they did with
it's a stupid
in their playing career.
That's a stupid question. Because every single manager was
the answer is yes, you do.
No, every single manager was an ex-pro. In one way or another. So of course you're going to judge. I judge the big name nonsense, the autograph hunting, the popcorn moment when you get to meet Wayne Rooney. Oh, I'm going to give Wayne Rooney a job because Wayne Rooney scored an overhead kick for Man United against Man City or wherever he scored. No, I'm going to give Wayne Rooney a job because he can interview properly and string a sentence together. And also, he's going to show to me what my problems are, meets my requirements. It's not because once upon a time, and every single manager, with a very minute exception, were ex-pros. So the framing of your question is silly.
If you're watching on YouTube and Facebook, this must be thoroughly entertaining.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.